The year was 2011. Fun, Adele, Young Money were topping the charts. Pop music was in a new renaissance. At the time, I was in sixth grade and still a few years too early to own a smartphone. But I found a loophole. I was armed with a fourth generation iPod Touch that was gifted to me by my parents on my birthday. I had all the ancillary comforts of owning an iPhone, like iMessage and the App Store, at a time when using your phone just to call someone was already falling out of favor, anyways. At the time, the iTunes Store was still the best medium to buy music. I think it was around $1.29 a song, and I certainly didn't have access to that kind of money at the time. So I had to use LimeWire to scour through files and download radio rips of songs introduced by the Trapaholics tag.
Trapaholics Mixtape.
iTunes offered a free song of the week, which is how I discovered Little Talks by Of Monsters and Men. It was a whole new musical frontier opening up, and not just for middle school me. Today, we're over a decade past that stomp clap era of folk pop, and we've seen the rocket ship of other genres, such as hip hop, over the last decade and a half. There's been a lot of nostalgia online about 2010 pop culture, but I truly do feel that there's a confluence of factors economic, political, musical, technological that make the period a fascinating and successful era for pop culture. We saw the rise of new entrants like Marina the Diamonds, Lana Del Rey, Bruno Mars, Lorde, The Weeknd, and Justin Bieber, and artists such as Rihanna, Katy Perry, Gaga, and Lil Wayne cementing their place in the cultural zeitgeist. You also had sort of genre-bending experimentation thanks to David Guetta, Skrillex, Zedd, and Calvin Harris, which laid the groundwork for EDM and festival music. I would argue that there are several factors which made the early 2010s such a fertile ground for pop music. One, songs became literally more melodic, especially hip hop, which is making its meteoric commercial ascent. Producers like Timbaland and Pharrell, in particular, were cultural juggernauts. Uh, in a sense, they were kind of gap junctions across mainstream pop superstars like Gwen Stefani and Justin Timberlake, and for hip hop's next generation, along with more cross pollination. Drake took inspiration from Lil Wayne for his early rapping style, but he also seamlessly switched between singing and rapping with undertones of emotional vulnerability, which made him a really, really good Swiss Army knife for rappers who were trying to cross the chasm into mainstream pop. A very similar trajectory to Nicki Minaj. Sia developed dramatic, cinematic hooks, and she paired them with features from rap stars such as Kendrick Lamar, who often issued biting, memorable social commentary in their music. I think another factor was streaming. The iPod's tagline was originally 1,000 songs in your pocket, but by 2010, I think everyone knew that that wasn't the future anymore. Streaming was entering the picture, people now wanted millions of songs in their pocket. In 2010, the iPhone 4 had just come out. And so for several years, people had already had a chance to figure out their smartphone usage habits, what they could and couldn't get from their phones. You really didn't need to use a family computer anymore to access the internet. And Gen Z was accessing the internet in droves for the first time. I remember when I was in fifth grade, there were just a handful of people I knew who were using social media, and it was MySpace, by the way. But by the end of sixth grade, Facebook had basically established a grip on kids that had lasted for years, which was pried off in some years by Instagram and Snapchat. Music discovery was officially in the hands of friend shares and feeds, not what was on the radio or music video channels. It's also almost impossible to overstate the impact of YouTube on discovering music. So YouTube made it super easy for music videos to spread like wildfire, right? So in the early 2010s, going viral became a common phrase in the American lexicon. For the first time, you had both established pop stars and new entrants having their media distributed on the same channels. It didn't matter if your label was Universal Music Group, or if you were an SNL spinoff making catchy shock value songs, or if your label was non-existent and you were uploading videos from your bedroom at home in Canada. Fidelity also mattered. At the time, HD video, going from 480 to 720p, also allowed for music videos to tell better stories at a higher production value than ever before. There was also the end of the recession. So this was likely a psychological catalyst for more escapist, more creative, and even cathartic media consumption. This goes beyond music. Look at the explosion of creative film and TV at that time. The Inception trailer for Christopher Nolan movie was, in particular, a watershed moment for sound design. You had The Social Network, which took what could have been a very dry story about how a tech company came to be and made it into a really compelling drama with an equally effective soundtrack. And then you had The Avengers, which had surprising success with Iron Man and parlayed that into this international generational media platform with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But going back to the music, all this really did have a big commercial impact on the back end. I think in 2010, digital sales accounted for almost half of all music purchased in the US, which was up from just a third in 2008. Katy Perry's Teenage Dream album, which came out at the end of August in 2010, had 5 number one singles, which tied at the time Michael Jackson's record. And it helped establish this bubblegum pop aesthetic for her music that continued at least through 2013 when she released Dark Horse's Juicy J. And in 2011, Daniel Ek had launched Spotify. Within just a year, they had 20 million users, about 5 million, 4 to 5 million of which were already paying customers. And as a result, Billboard in March of 2012 added streaming to their formula for how they calculated the Hot 100, which up until that point had only calculated virality by radio plays and unit downloads, meaning like things you buy off of the iTunes store. Then the next year in February of 2013, even YouTube views were added. And actually, that's how the Harlem Shake became number one. So from 2010, when streaming was 7% of the total music market, up until 2019, when it was 80% of the total market, you can see that we had a total paradigm shift in the way music was consumed and how accessible it was to the average listener. Algorithms, too, are defining the way that we consume music. Instead of getting music from friends or by social listening, it's mostly through playlists, which are increasingly curated by vibes instead of by artists or labels. Whereas the album aesthetics and like the order of the songs in the album used to be paramount in telling a story, this is being replaced by playlists. So artists have less time to tell a story, meaning one song instead of an entire sequence of them. And since you as an artist would be paid by the stream, you have some incentive to shorten your songs, make them more melodic and catchy. These economics are unlikely to change in the near future. So is pop music actually worse now? In my opinion, the short answer is no, but it's easy to feel like it is. The algorithms that now define the way we listen to music can end up trapping you in these feedback loops where people end up replaying these comfort tracks over and over the same way that we rewatch The Office or Parks and Rec. And we stay in these familiar emotional zones and memories rather than venturing out into new experiences. And as a result, when things go viral, this increases their impact in the short term, but shortens the average duration of viral impact. And so you have fewer big pop moments that once dominated this monoculture, such as like Teenage Dream or Rolling in the Deep when they came out. I mean, if you go look at TikTok, you always see commenters stating that some new artist has fallen off, and they're saying that faster and faster and faster every couple months. But there's optimism here. Algorithmic discovery is getting sharper. If you are looking for it, it will surface more niche artists. And songs can go viral and chart before radio programmers even notice them. So with Lil Nas X's Old Town Road, that became the longest running number one in Hot 100 history, I think almost 5 months. That's primarily driven by TikTok engagement and reposts and memes. But I think it's undeniable that 2010 through 2012 to 2014 was a very, very special time in American society and pop culture. As we were coming out of a recession, as you had producers working across different genres, you had all new ways to access music, media, and to create art as well. The future will most likely continue to favor human creativity, precisely because the flood of AI-generated filler music will probably make authenticity feel scarce and more valuable than before. And pop music may not look exactly like it did back in 2010. The album as a storytelling vehicle in particular will probably never return to its former dominance, but the window for what can break through into the mainstream is wider than ever. We can kind of choose to sit in our algorithmic comfort zones or choose to explore. And when we do, I think there's a lot more fruits for our efforts than at any point in history before. Thanks for listening.